Here is how I designed and put together a 3D printable Spider-Man web shooter that actually shoots. Okay, let's be honest. Spider-Man is probably one of, if not the coolest and best written superhero of all time. And that's really not a hot take. There's honestly multiple reasons why he would deserve that title. Whether it be his moral compass, the different dynamic and aspects of being Peter Parker versus being Spider-Man, and also, I feel like there's something I'm forgetting. Oh yeah, and also his web shooters. I mean, he can swing from them, he can shoot them out rapidly, he can stick people and things to walls with them, he can ricochet them, he can splitter them, he can electrify them. Now, his web shooters are very cool, but they're also very fictional, as of now. While in real life, we don't have like web shooters and web fluid, what we do have is a 3D printer, string, magnets, and springs. We can make something happen with that. So let's get started. Yeah, so after about a whole day of thinking, I had nothing. I mean, like nothing at all. Every once in a while, I get an idea, but then after really thinking about it and like the practicality of it, I realized that it just wasn't gonna work. And then I was just back to ground zero. But eventually, after way too long, I finally got an idea. Here was the concept. This 3D presentation is horrible, but please bear with me through it, okay? The piece that you are looking at is called the cannon. I call it the cannon because the web will shoot out of it. The cannon will have a spring or multiple springs inside of it. This piece is our web. It is what will shoot out of the cannon and take the string with it. The web will be loaded into the cannon, compressing the spring or springs on the inside. This is the most important piece. It will contain both the cannon and the compressed web. It is the most important piece because of this wall right here. The cannon and the compressed web will be lowered down into this piece, and the web will not be able to shoot out because of the wall blocking it. Now, when the trigger of the web shooter is pressed, it will be connected to the cannon and it will lift it up, and with the wall not blocking the web anymore, the springs inside will expand and shoot the web out. Now that we have a solid concept, it's time to start designing the actual pieces that we're going to use. The first two pieces that I designed were the web and the cannon. On the left screen, we have the cannon, and on the right screen, we have the web. The springs that I'm using for the web shooter have a 0.8 centimeter or 8 millimeter circumference. So I designed the opening in the cannon to be a little bit bigger than that, so hopefully the spring fits perfectly in there. I also made sure the long part of the web has a smaller circumference in the spring, so hopefully it just slides right into the spring. I printed the web with a width of 14 millimeters and with an infill density of 100%. And I printed the cannon with a width of 17.8 millimeters and with an infill density of 30%. All right, now it's time to print. So to my shock, the web and the cannon prints actually came out basically perfect. The web got broken because for some reason I wanted to test and see how much strength it had to it, but I just super glued it back together. For the cannon, everything that was supposed to fit in it fit perfectly. The spring fit perfectly in there. It was like a snug fit. It wasn't too tight or too loose. And the long and wider part of the webs had no resistance at all, and they can just shoot out perfectly because the openings were just as big as they needed to be. Now it's time to actually test and see how far and if the web would actually shoot out of the cannon. And I was joined by my cat Ellie. Say hello. By this time, I decided to use two springs, one spring inside the cannon and then another one on the web, just to get a little bit more distance. And it actually worked. I was a little thrown off because it shot out like weirdly, but that will get situated later. With the web and cannon done, it was time to design the actual piece they were both going to be in. I ended up going with two halves instead of making a whole piece. The reason I did this was so I could print out one of the halves and see if the wall blocking off the compressed web would work like how I wanted it to. There was a top half and there was a bottom half. The reason the bottom half has this little hole in it was because part of the trigger was supposed to go through that, and then when I press it, it would lift the cannon up and shoot the web out. But we'll see later down the line why I didn't end up going with that. And the reason the bottom half is not round on the inside is to give more space for the cannon to lay down and for the wall to cover more of the web. I also added some slanted or angled parts in the halves because I thought it would help the cannon move better. Then I went ahead and printed one of the halves for me to test out. I printed the top half instead of the bottom half for some reason, but it ended up not mattering because it still worked. Even with the top half not being as deep as the bottom and not having more wall to cover the web, it still worked. And that actually made me very happy because I constantly doubted if it would even work or not, and it gave me more drive and motivation to keep going and see the whole web shooter through. Then I went ahead and printed the bottom half. Now with all 4 pieces, I taped the top and bottom halves together so they wouldn't open or separate, and I put the cannon and web inside of them. And when I tried to test it, we had a little problem. The cannon was not long enough. The part that stuck out of the halves I could only grab with like my fingernails. And the open parts in the halves where the cannon was supposed to stick out were not big enough, so the cannon could not move in there at all. It was an easy fix though. All I had to do was make the openings in the halves where the cannon was going to be at a little bit longer so I could move the cannon up and down more. And I also shortened the front of the cannon and extended the back of it, as well as get rid of this weird flat part. That was there because of the original concept I had for the web shooters, but I just didn't need it anymore. I extended the back of the cannon so that there was more for me to grab when I was loading the web in it. I also got rid of the angled part in the bottom half because it was getting in the way of the cannon's movement. But even with all this done, we still need to figure out the trigger and a way to make the web shoot out. The first idea that I had gotten goes back to when I added the hole in the bottom half. Basically, part of the trigger was supposed to go in that hole, and whenever I would press the trigger, it would lift the cannon up and shoot the web out. It is possible, but I just designed it poorly. With a design like this, if you press the trigger is either going to break or it will literally have no room at all to lift the cannon up, so this one was a no-go. My second idea I had was 2 separate pieces that would have been connected by poles on the end of one of them, and with springs in between those poles. My thinking with it was basically that pulling the trigger would cause the back end to lift up because of the springs causing resistance, and the back end would have been connected to the cannon. This one seems possible. It just seems like one you have to keep like fidgeting and struggling with to try to get it to lift the cannon up. And I just want a trigger where you just press it and it works immediately. Also, I didn't exactly design this one well either, so this one was also a no-go. My third idea was a complex box with a teeter-totter mechanism inside, and when the trigger is pressed, it would lift up the front end, pulling down the back end and also pulling down the cannon. Alright, I'm getting a little too carried away with all of this. I always had an idea in my head of the solution. It's just one I didn't want to go with because web shooters usually have a sleek kind of design to them, and I didn't want mine to be like big or like bulky looking. But honestly, this whole project has been a big learning experience, and there'll always be room to improve and to grow. Even now, editing this video, I've noticed multiple changes that could be made to give it a way more aesthetically pleasing look. And even then, the design, in my personal and biased opinion, came out pretty good. So, and here it is. Now, before you say anything, just let me explain, okay? But before I explain what you're looking at, some changes need to be made. First, we need to flatten the round part of the bottom half and put a hole in the flattened area, as well as remove the hole that we added earlier. Now, as for the whole trigger itself, it's basically a box, okay? We have a top piece of the box and a bottom piece of the box. Come on, you know I like to split things up in two. The whole box itself will be the same length as the bottom half, so that the hole in the bottom half and the top piece of the box align, and the holes will be the exact same size. The trigger will have an L kind of shape to it, and it will also have a hole in it. So will the bottom part of the box. Just a hole going straight through the whole thing. And there will also be a pin. The pin will barely be smaller than the hole in the bottom part of the box, so that it fits like tightly in there. But just extra reassurance that the pin doesn't slide out, I put holes at both ends of the pin that don't go all the way through. And I also made screws to fit perfectly in those holes, so maybe I can super glue them or something. And I made the hole in the trigger a little bit bigger than the pin, so that it's not too tight and it doesn't like get difficult to press. Now, as for how the whole thing works, there will be a slot in both parts of the box, and those are there so that the trigger has more range moving up and down. Now, when the trigger is pressed, it's basically like a teeter-totter. The trigger will be on the pin, and when the trigger is pressed and the front side goes down, it will cause the back end to lift up, and the back end has that part that sticks out so it can push the cannon up, and then the web should be able to shoot out. And the things that are sticking out of the bottom part of the box, that's basically what goes around my wrist. I put little openings in them because I was gonna attach Velcro or just like fabric to them and then wrap them around my wrist. And that's how I would keep the web shooter worn. But while at first this design was like decent to me, just the more I looked at it, I just like, it was honestly just rushed and choppy. And with the design like this, it's really boxy, so you'd have to get like the measurements perfect for it to sit perfectly on your wrist. But I still kind of wanted to see if it would fit around my wrist or what it would look like in general. So I printed literally just like the first outer layer of it. After printing that first layer to test, it did not fit around my wrist. And I really was just not a fan of the boxy look. So I just did a redesign on it. I redesigned it with a way more smooth and curved kind of look. And I actually like this one way better. And with the curve kind of design, you don't have to get the measurements perfect for it to fit around your wrist. And then I did the first layer test again just to see if it would fit around my wrist at least like decently. And it did, so I was happy. I could have bought the sides in a little bit more so they didn't hang over my wrist too much, but it still worked out anyways. And then I printed basically everything except for the trigger and the part that would go on my wrist. I was confident and also kind of praying that these would be my final prints. And thankfully those pieces were a majority of my final prints. The pieces came out good and everything was working like how it's supposed to. And I was pretty confident that the part that would go on my wrist would come out good. So the only thing to worry about now was the trigger. The footage you're seeing is just me testing out the new pieces and seeing if the whole push-up idea worked or didn't. Now for the trigger. I printed the first version that I had of it earlier, and yeah, it just wasn't it. Just too long, too boxy, pretty ugly, honestly. And I printed it with 100% infill density. My thinking at the time was just I wanted it to be strong and not like break if I press it too hard. But 100% infill density was way too much, and the front of it would have been too heavy, so the whole teeter-totter thing wouldn't work. With a good amount of trial and error, I found a design that I liked best and I think worked best. The main changes that I had made was making it shorter, also slightly moving the hole backwards, and I changed the design for the part that sticks out. I made it a little bit longer and made the design more like centered, just so the back of it isn't flat and it doesn't like get caught up on the wall in the hole or anything. And probably the most noticeable, there's not a big box at the front of it anymore. It's like a small oval now, and I like it a lot better. And I also printed a new web with an opening in it that was the same size as the magnet I was gonna use. I printed out the part that goes on my wrist, and I also printed out the trigger as well. I got this yarn from one of my local stores, and it actually kind of looks like Spider-Man's webs. And now with all of our pieces printed out, it was time to officially start assembling. I first assembled the bottom half of the web shooter, which was the part that would go on my wrist, the trigger, the screws, and the pin. I started off with those because those are the pieces that I don't have to super glue or anything. I can just piece them together. And if anything goes wrong, I can just take them apart also. And then I started actually super gluing pieces together. Off camera, I super glued together the two halves that would hold the cannon. And also off camera, I temporarily taped everything together just to test it and make sure it was working like how I wanted it to. And it was. So I super glued the two halves and the cannon to the lid of like the bottom half of the web shooter. And since the backs of almost all the pieces are flat, it was easy to get them evened out after I applied glue because I just put them all on a flat surface. Then I took that whole super glued together piece and super glued it to the rest of the web shooter. And by this point, we were like 90% done with the whole thing. Now for the web or string, whatever you want to call it. To get it attached to the web, you basically just twist it up and feed it through the cannon and then pull it out through the other side. And then you put it through the spring, and there's still space for the web because the string isn't that like thick. And I didn't even have to tie it or anything. I just wrapped it around the web and pulled the string up to the top of the web. And then to load the web, you just push it into the web shooter. You push the front end down and push the back end up, and then it's loaded. And then to shoot it, you just pull the trigger. I still needed to print out one more piece to hold the string, so I made this. It has a little anchor at the bottom of it, and that's there so I can tie the string around it. So whenever I shoot the web out, the whole string won't go flying out. I got the piece printed out, and I was able to tie the string to the bottom of it using tweezers. After getting a longer piece of string and tying it to the bottom of the container, to load it, all I had to do was literally just stuff it all in there. This is sped up, and this was my first time doing it, so I was kind of struggling, but it's really not that hard. And the more you do it, obviously, the more you get used to it. And with the string or web holder working like how I wanted it to, I super glued it to the back of the shooter, and I ordered this 2-inch adhesiveless Velcro off of Amazon. 2-inch wide was the perfect size Velcro to get because the opening in the web shooters were like 2.2 inches. I stuck both halves of the Velcro together and cut them at a length that I thought was decent. And I wrapped the Velcro around the opening in the web shooters and used pins to keep them in place. And I won't lie, I don't know how to do any sewing or anything, so I literally just ordered a stapler as well, and I stapled the Velcro in place. I stapled the Velcro a couple more times just to make sure it was secure, and with that done, the web shooter was completed. Yeah, that just did not work. I don't know. I don't know why I tried that. That just did not work. Anyways, if you enjoyed the video, feel free to give it a like. And if you want to see more future builds and whatnot, go ahead and subscribe. And also, if there's anything you want to see be made or like attempted to be made, please comment it down below, because I have the dedication and the delusion to make these things. Sometimes I just don't have the ideas of what to make, But yeah, that's really it, y'all. Take care. Goodbye.